Still here. This is a true story about a young girl, the only Jewish one in her class, in an elementary school in the United States. The period is the beginning of the 1960s. The young girl is my mother. This is her story in her own words. In the 5th grade, my home teacher, Mrs. Hammond, taught history and social studies. On that day, we were learning about the results of the World War II and the foundation of the United Nations. I read the material in the night before class so I would be prepared. More than 60 million people lost their lives in the war. And then she started to count how many people were dead in the Soviet Union front and how many Japanese in the casualties were in the front, and so on and so on. I don't remember the numbers exactly, but then she continued to the foundation, straight away to the foundation of the United Nations. Mrs. Hammond, I raised my hand, but burst out saying, "You forgot something very important. 6 million Jews were killed in the war. 1.5 million almost were children." Mrs. Hammond stared at me. I could see that she was angry and upset. "How dare you interrupt me? You always think that you know everything, that you are so smart, but you are not. You are nothing, nobody. Just a dirty little Jew." I was shocked, speechless. I felt the tears coming, but somehow managed to hold myself back. I felt as if the walls were closing in on me. All I wanted to do was to walk out of the classroom and call my father. I got up and started walking out, took my bag and sweater, and went towards the door. "Young lady, Miss Salomon, come back immediately," Miss Hammond called after me, but I left the room and walked to the principal's office. I wanted to call my father to come and pick me up. I wasn't going to stay another minute in school. As I arrived to the principal's office, the principal saw that something was wrong. She asked me if I was feeling well, and I answered that I just want to phone home. I didn't want her to understand what I was going to say, so I decided to speak with my father in Yiddish. I dialed the number, praying that my father will answer and not my mom. After a few rings, my father answered, and I said, "Daddy," barely controlling my voice. I read it in Yiddish. "Kim schnell, ich will gehen heim." Come quickly, I want to go home. My father understood and told me to wait for him outside. 10 minutes later, he arrived. As soon as I saw him, I broke down and cried. He asked me what happened, and I told him. "She called me a dirty little Jew." "Who? Who called you that?" "Mrs. Hammond, the teacher," I answered. My father hugged me and said, "We will talk about this at home." I repeated the story to my mother and watched the looks that exchanged between them. On that day, the phone rang and rang. A representative of the PTA, Parents Teacher Association, a member of the education department, and a neighbor who was a newspaper reporter wanted to interview me, but my parents didn't agree, of course. It was decided that Mrs. Hammond would retire at the end of the school year. She would apologize to me in front of the class, and that would be it. After 3 days, I went back to school. At the time, we would have assembly which included the Pledge of the Allegiance, singing the national anthem, and roll call alphabetically. There are two ways to answer when your name is called: here or present. I thought that I would respond when my name was called still here, but discarded the idea immediately. I didn't want any more troubles. Mrs. Hammond called my name, Salomon. I answered, here, and the day began. She asked me to stand up, and these were her words, more or less. A few days ago, words were said that should not have been said. For that, I apologize. Do you accept my apology? I said that I do, and the school day continued. At the end of this day, just before I was leaving, as I gathered my notebooks and school books, I found myself alone with my home teacher, Mrs. Hammond, in the classroom. She stood before me with a mannequin glare and said hatefully, "Hitler was right. They should have killed you all." We were alone. Nobody else heard her anti-Semitic remark. I could not let her words unaffect me. I answered, "Mrs. Hammond, I am still here. The Jewish people are still here, and it's going to be here forever." I turned my back on her and walked out.